Hi, I'm Jozua Malherbe and I'm a director living in Cape Town, South Africa. I graduated from film school in 2004 as a writer-producer. My entry into the film and television industry was as a PA and then later on a first assistant director. After doing that for 6 years professionally, I got an opportunity to pitch on a film as a director, and in 2011 I directed my first feature film. I spent the next 6 years directing primetime television, where I really focused on the craft of storytelling. I mean, TV is a place where you can make mistakes and try things, which is exactly what I did. In 2017, I directed and shot my last local television show so that I could turn my attention back to producing, writing and directing feature films. And today, I'm going to be talking to you about directing and the basic principles of what it is that a director does. In this course, I'll answer 10 questions to give you a clearer understanding of what it is exactly that I do and what my duties are and how I fit into the magical chain of filmmaking. What makes a good script? How do I write a script? How do I interpret a script as a director? What is the process of casting actors? How do I work with actors on set? How do you create a world for the actor and the character? How do you choose your crew? How involved am I in the budget and schedule of making a film? What do I do in post-production? And what to do once the film is done? Let's dive into it. The basis and blueprint for any film is the script. The importance can't be overemphasized. There's an adage that not all great scripts might become great films, but certainly there has never been a bad script that has become a great film. A good script is the first block to setting yourself up for success. So what makes a good script? When you read a script, how can you know that this one is good and the other one is not? There is a question of taste. You may like something that I don't, but that is certainly just the tip of the iceberg. So here are some practical things to ask yourself when reading a script to determine whether a script is good or not. Firstly, does the story make sense? This seems like a real elemental question, but often writers think that because it makes sense in their heads, others will understand it, and it's just not true. After you've read the script, you should be able to retell the story simply, in a few sentences to anybody. If you find yourself over-explaining or saying things like, "Oh no, you'll understand it if you read it," then red flag the script. It might need more work. Number 2, is the structure clear? While you're reading, can you feel the script ebb and flow? Were you surprised at parts of the script? And when you finished, do you feel that you understand what the characters went through as people? A good, clear structure generally ensures these things. The turning points allow for surprise and intrigue, as well as ensuring the writer has addressed the themes and character philosophies in some way or another. You could get really technical about structure. One shortcut is reading the first 10 pages, the middle 10 pages, and the last 10 pages. And by doing that, you should have a good idea of what happened in the script, but I don't recommend this. And number 3, are the problems that are being set up solved? A good script needs to address every question that it raises, whether plot or character. A good script will close each door that it opened, leaving you satisfied that there are no loose ends. So just to summarize, does the story make sense? Is the structure clear? And are the problems that are being set up all solved? These 3 principles will give you an indication on whether the script is any good to start with. Each director has a voice, and often it is easier to find your directing voice by writing your own work. I want to be clear that not all directors write. Many of the biggest name directors, in fact, don't. Fincher, Kubrick, Spielberg, none are credited as writers, but I assure you that they work extremely close with their respective writers to get the story that they want to tell. If some of you have an inkling that you might want to write, here are some things to think about and try when writing your script. Tell a story that you want to see. Don't be afraid to show the world what you find interesting and entertaining. Delve into the ideas that make you tick and draw from that. I'm not saying you have to be autobiographical, but enter your own inner world and find a story that is percolating there and bring it to life. Writing is rewriting, and this for me is the hardest part of writing. It takes so much willpower and effort to complete a first draft, only to throw most of it away as you progress towards your shooting draft. This pain is an integral part of writing, and you can't get fit and strong without going through some pain. That's the process. You have to be okay with it. Read, read, read. There is natural talent and there is craft. Great writers have both, and the latter is practice and knowledge. Read books and poems and scripts. Nurture a love for the written word, and specifically a love for screenplay. Your scripts will just be better for it. Format is important. Although story is king, the way in which you present that story to the reader is equally important. Spend that cash to get the right software. Watch the tutorials, read scripts, and practice getting your screenplay into the correct format. Write like a writer and not a director. You want the reader to have an immersive experience of the story and not read what the director wants to do with the scene. This might mean leaving out camera movements, blocking instructions, and editing notes to at least keep them to a minimum and really add them only if they serve the story. Don't be afraid of failure. The wonderful thing about writing is that you can just delete what you don't like. So if it's a bad scene, try it again. Keep knocking at it, iterating the idea until it's tight and slick. Once the script has been approved, it's time for you, the director, to take the reins and begin your journey of interpretation. I spend a lot of time just thinking about the script, meditating the scenes and the characters and focusing on what it is that makes me feel. This feeling could be an image or a word and sometimes even a concept. A good way to plot the journey of your interpretation is by having an ideas book, a place where you can practically store all the ideas that come to you while reading the script. Saving or sticking down pictures, making notes on the script, and generally just putting everything down that you think or feel. Having a singular place for these ideas will help you later. Once I have a substantial amount of work in my ideas book, I begin to look for patterns. Ideas or visual elements that have repeated themselves and come up multiple times. This to me is an indicator that my intuition is onto something. The process of refinement is important because you'll have way too much stuff. Focus on what the story is, what the heart is, and how you intend to communicate that heart, that idea. Get the broad strokes in place and communicate these to the HODs so that they can begin their own journey of discovery and interpretation. Think about the way you feel you want to move with a camera, the type of sets and designs you want to introduce into the world. Colors and even character-specific elements can be decided on at this point. Now I begin to work per scene. What it is that I want to communicate in this scene. How do I want to pace this scene? And which character's scene is this and why? If you can answer these questions, then the blocking and camera positions begin to reveal themselves, and you can thus move on to shot listing and storyboarding. Interpreting a script is about intuition, taste, research, and communication. What it is that your intuition leans toward, and how does what you like and your taste define that intuition? What in your research is creating a narrative layer that does not yet exist in the script? And finally, what are you trying to communicate and how are you going to do that? Each of these questions leads to a thought tree that you should explore to ensure that you as the director can defend your choices and know why you're doing something one way and not another way. The casting room can be a very intimidating space for directors and actors. For actors, it's a place of unknowns. They don't know you, the director. They only have a small piece of the script and have to make big performance choices based on the little bit of information that they have. What I try to do in casting room is to set a precedent that there's no right and wrong in this space. I want to see what the actor brings to the table, how they interpret what they read, and if it's not what I had in mind, I want to be open to that. I want to be surprised because then the audience will be surprised too. I work hard at making the actor feel comfortable, so that when they perform, I'm not watching a ball of nerves. Tensions are running high, and I really don't need to exasperate that feeling. My intent in the casting room is to see what I can coax out of an actor in a very short space of time. How malleable are they? Can they take direction? And very important, what is the actor's proposal for this role? I always first ask the actor to show me what they prepared before I give notes or descriptions or even begin to talk about the character. I want to see an unbiased proposition. I make sure that I film these castings because by the end of the day of casting, my brain is fried and my emotional capacity much less. So I want to be able to watch these castings a couple of times over before starting to make firm choices. By the third, fourth or fifth rounds of casting, I'll really start working with actors and exploring options for performances. I've gone as far as to ask actors to write short bios or poems about the character or through the character's eyes. And what I'm looking at is a point of view and whether this actor and me have a similar point of view on a character. It doesn't have to be the same, but we need to be able to collaborate in the creation of this character. At the end of the day, the casting room is a neutral space. All the actors have the same scenes with the same character bios, and they have a small window to present what they feel they can do with the character. The playing field is level, and I can very quickly see who gets it. I try not to be too involved in the first round of casting because I get carried away with each person and spend way too much time wanting to develop an idea. A casting director will be able to help you in this process, especially to expedite it. You should also rely on your casting director's opinion about actors in roles. They have the experience and they have seen many actors in the industry, so they'll be able to guide you in finding and choosing the right actor for the role. Once we arrive on a scene and we are on the film set, I ask my technical team to step off. Only my AD and sometimes my DOP can hang about. The set is quiet and it's time for me and the actor to workshop the scene. By this point, we've already had rehearsals and spent many hours talking about the character goals, emotional world, and the story. We'll now work on the brass tacks of the scene. Where does the actor stand and why? Does the actor move? Really just getting into the practical elements of the scene, which might include props or a stunt, and obviously blocking. Once we've sketched the scene out like that, I'll do a few rehearsals with the cast, running the scene over and over and including the blocking, props, or soft version of the stunt. I'll iterate the blocking as I go and try different things until all of us, myself and the actors, are happy with how the scene flows. Once we have the outline of it, the AD will call the crew back to the set and watch the rehearsal. Now this is the time where the DOP and the art director will talk to me about shot selection and camera movement and what we'll be showing in the scene. The actors then go away, perhaps to make up or just take a break while the technical team set up for the first shot of the planned blocking. And then the fun begins. In the same tradition as casting, my first take will always be the actor's proposal, with as little interference from me as possible. I might cut the camera to do a reset on a scene, or I might continue rolling, keeping the actor in that moment and just adding some direction and notes to affect the performance. This form of free play has really served me, and it's a new style of directing that I've recently found. Many actors are thrown off by the immediacy and impromptu nature of shooting like this, but once they get into it, I can see how free they become to play, experiment and try different performances all on the same line. Working with actors on set is for me like mining for gold. I want to mine that performer by giving them performance puzzles to solve and asking them to try very different things with the lines. This is the only time I get to shoot a scene and I want to make the most of it. This is where I want the actor to use their skill as the storyteller and show me all the different ways in which this story can be told. How does the actor know what I want from the character? And how do I know what the actor is trying to do with the character? By not being on the same page as your actor, you might end up spending way too much time on set trying to figure each other out. And on set is the last place where you want to find out that your idea of the character and the actor's idea of the character is absolutely not the same. And what they're doing might be in total conflict with the rest of your film. To avoid these unpleasantries, I recommend creating a world for you and the actor where the character can be explored in a real practical form. Talking about it is one thing, but actually writing a history for the character, that's something else. Using practical exercises is a great way of exploring character and finding interesting details that can be added to the characterization and expanding the emotional world of the character. I like to create lookbooks around my main cast, which include wardrobe ideas, props, habits, and character traits. If you find that some of your characters kind of sound the same, try using star signs or the Myers-Briggs personality summaries as a starting point. These summaries give us basic human tropes to follow and might be a nice way for you to communicate to your actor what type of person the character is that you're creating. The script will give you a basic visual summary and obviously reveal the plot points and define the character journey. But really it's your job as a director to link these points and to create a three-dimensional human being. You need to understand the motivation behind the performance choice to know whether the character is actually being honest and being consistent within their emotional landscape. What makes your character tick? What do they do when they're not working? Knowing these sorts of details will inform your choices on set. And although no one will know why your lead character loves ice cream, the fact that you know this and understand why this is important will guide you in directing your actor and your art director and your DOP in telling a more coherent and subtle narrative. Finding collaborators that share your vision or understand how to translate your crazy ideas into reality may be a career-long effort. There is certainly no one way to finding the team to go on this artist journey of making a film. Filmmaking, as opposed to say like painting or composing or sculpting, requires a team of artists to execute one work. You need specialists in each field of music, design, cinematography, sound, logistics, finance, performance, and so on to actually make the picture come to life. This A team of creative needs to work together and towards a common goal. No small feat. I found my team by being involved in my industry, by having my nose to the ground and getting involved in other people's projects. That way, I found my network expand and expose me to people that are outside of my social comfort zone. If you stay only in your circle, then you'll mill around the same ideas and you might ultimately suffocate your own creative awareness. By challenging yourself with people who don't necessarily agree with you or have radical personal creative voice, might push you as the director to places that you might not have been able to access otherwise. This creative jousting keeps you honest, fresh, and original. Before I crew up though, especially if I'm looking for a position where I need to work with someone that I've not worked with yet, I go through a pretty rigorous interviewing process. Much like the casting room, the interview is the same platform for all the creatives that enter. They have the same material, and what they bring to the table in that interview will determine our next steps. I like to plan questions beforehand and be prepared for the meeting, knowing what the candidate has done before, watch some of their work, and spoken to some of their references will give you a good idea as to who they are. My questions in the interview will range from just normal creative ideas and sharing those to asking pretty personal questions about vision and person-to-person interactions. I mean, I want to know why they're here and why they want to work with me, as much as I want to communicate to them why I would like to work with them. The biggest takeaway from my last film has been to work with artists as HODs. Now, this sounds pretty straightforward, but it took me like a decade to get that. Each of my collaborators are in their own right artists. Whether they're musicians, painters, writers, they live creative lives outside of the film industry. These collaborators could bring all of their experience to the table with a dialogue that goes beyond scene. I could talk about what I wanted the film to feel like, to smell like, and then have the artist interpret that vision. I wanted my heads of department to put themselves into the movie, make this part of their art, and ensure that my direction is clear enough that once everyone has put themselves into the film, it still feels like one idea, like one cohesive piece of work. Finding your crew is going to be tough, because making a film is a very personal space to share with people, and trying to navigate personalities, egos, and conflict can be tough. But that's also the role of the director. You're the leader of this glorious, colorful troupe who want to tell a story and will be looking at you for guidance, when they feel they need it, and approval when they have something to show you. So don't get in their way. Offer support, offer a clear vision, and set the bar high. Don't let fools break down what others are trying to build, and get rid of any toxic people on set as quickly as you can. There's no time for distraction, and sometimes personalities just don't get along. Now, that's okay, but you'll have to ensure that it never, ever gets in the way of making your film. Kubrick made it very clear that time is gold. His priority was always to have more time. He reused stationery from one production to the next to save money to have more time. I think you get what I'm trying to say. So how involved am I in the budget and the schedule? As involved as I possibly can be. These two resources, time and money, are the biggest real-life factors that will determine the success of your shoot. The easier option is to say, I'm the creative, don't talk to me about money or schedule. But the reality is that if you are not involved, then you have no say or understanding about why things are the way that they are. and you have no control over how these precious resources are being spent. I try and work alongside my producer on the budget, communicating with them which scenes and sequences will need special attention, sharing with them my ideas on how I want to shoot sequences and where I want to spend time. I also want to know what the impact of my choices are so that I can prioritize early on and not get into a situation where my first week of shoot is great, but the last 3 weeks all the money is finished and there's no coffee. Should I have a crane or 100 extras? These are the types of questions I want to be part of, because ultimately on the day, I'll have to shoot the scene with whatever ends up on set. I also work closely with the AD on the shooting schedule as well as the pre-production schedule. Now there might be logistics that I'm unaware of, but I'm acutely aware of which scenes are being shot on the same day, because this tells me how much time I can spend on the moments or the beats of my story. Sometimes the AD will think that a small scene is quite insignificant and kind of stack it together, whereas in fact it's quite the opposite. Being involved in these non-creative elements of making the film can have a huge impact on the execution of your creative vision. Everything you choose should be underlined with, is this helping me tell the story better, and how can I buy more time? If you look at the budget and the schedule, you may realize that your script is too complex for your resources. I mean, rather figure that out in the beginning, right? Set yourself up for success by working with your producer and your AD on the finite resources and the allocation of those resources. You are going to make 3 films. The film that is the script, the film that you shoot, and the film that you end up with after the edit. Editing is the final writing process. Here you'll have the opportunity to play with all the pieces of the puzzle that you mined while shooting. You get to watch through all the takes and performances and look for the ones that stood out, that were honest, that suit your taste and underpin the style of your film. Editing to get to the first cut of your film is quite energizing, and it's also the time of the most self-doubt. After this high of shooting the film, the reality of what you shot may be depressing at first. Trust me, we all go through it. I mean, Christopher Nolan doesn't even watch anything until his film is cut to a certain time. This is all to avoid that empty feeling of, I will never work again, what have I done? I needed to learn to relax in post-production and trust the process. To sit back and enjoy the playful process of editing, where the film can suddenly become anything, and each time you make another cut, the film reveals itself a little bit more. But it's a process. I like to watch through all my takes with the editor and pick things that I like, talking about how we could use the pieces as we go. Then I leave and let the editor make magic. This to and fro will happen for as long as my producer will allow me, or for as long as we can afford it. I want to watch it over and over, trying different things with the structure, with scenes and performances, to see if it creates a better way to communicate the story. Once the edit is locked, it's still a rough diamond, and the process of sound design, final mix, music composition and grade will make your diamond shine. But you have to trust the process. Each time someone else puts their hand on the film, it should sharpen up, should become a little bit clearer, and the story should be the loudest part of the experience. I also use this time in post to show the film to people, not everyone, selected viewings or specific individuals, to get feedback on pace and story and characters. I want to know that an audience is seeing what I'm trying to communicate. Do they get it, or am I too close to the film and no one knows what the hell I'm trying to say? These feedback sessions can be scary, but if you look at it like a scientist, you'll find that this inquiry can be very healthy and insightful. Make a distinction though, not all feedback will be useful. Getting constructive notes is useful, but hearing how someone would have done it or would have done it differently to you, that's definitely not useful. You are the biggest champion of your film, and you should also be your own biggest fan. So once the film is done, you need to take it to the world and show it. Whether that means entering into film festivals, creating your own screenings, or finding a sales agent who can get it distributed. Look, by this point you're going to be tired, even exhausted. And the truth is, this is where most filmmakers fall over. If you have the strength, I would work out on a strategy and what you and your producers can realistically achieve with a film. Maybe ask them what they plan on doing and see how you can participate. The last thing you want is your film to go nowhere. After all this hard work, you owe it to yourself and your crew, and certainly your cast, to get the film out there. Trust yourself, trust your picture, and show it to the world. Please be so kind to rate, review, and share this course with fellow filmmakers, as it helps us to create more content for you in the future. I really hope that this video has been helpful, and I wish you all the best in your filmmaking journey.